I'm sorry, the first thing Luke ever moved with the Force was kinda dumb. And I love it.
You're fulfilling your destiny.
Luke begins his training to become a Jedi late, much later than his father, who was already considered too old by Jedi standards. He then only received a few lessons from Obi-Wan before the old Jedi Master bit it and became one with the Force, a Force ghost that admitted he's a dirty, dirty liar.
From a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
So as you would imagine, Luke struggles to learn how to use the Force, which honestly, half the fun of material post A New Hope with Luke is that struggle. I don't know, there's just something about someone earning Force abilities instead of being given it that's really rewarding. Now in the canon novel Heir to the Jedi, we learn that post A New Hope and the death of Obi-Wan, Luke is struggling to learn the Force. Hard. Luke tries and fails to do the Kenobi mind trick he saw him use on Tatooine with the stormtroopers.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
He is so unaware of how to use the Force that Luke even tries to mimic Ben's small hand gesture by moving his hand in a tiny arc and rippling his fingers after his first failed attempt, only to fail again. This greatly frustrates Luke because he doesn't know if he's doing it wrong because he is so poorly trained, or because, as Ben told him, it only works on the weak-willed. Luke is so frustrated by his struggles and with understanding the Force in this book, he even mentions wanting to learn things about the Force from Darth Vader. Not have Darth Vader teach him per se, but learn a few things from him. Now eventually Luke realizes to construct his own lightsaber, he needs to be able to move the focusing crystals with his mind through telekinesis. He discovers this when he deconstructs a lightsaber and sees that the focusing crystals have been disturbed, and that the lightsaber wouldn't work until the proper focusing was there. Luke senses that aligning the crystals by hand is impossible, and that it must be done through the Force, and only through the Force would he know whether it was aligned properly or not. Though he doesn't have anyone to tell him, he knows that the Force, a power, flows through and around everything, and that manipulating it and using it to push and pull physical objects has to be part of the available Force abilities to him. He knows if the Force can physically affect him, for example, he knows it gives him heightened reflexes in battle, he should be able to use it to physically affect other things as well. The problem was Obi-Wan had never even addressed telekinesis with Luke, so his first attempt was not great. Luke first attempts to move a cranker root by himself to try to master this ability. Luke is smart about it though. He gives himself permission to fail since this is only his first attempt. Partly because he knew that there was no use getting upset with himself for not succeeding right away, but also because he remembered Obi-Wan said the man that killed his father, Vader, was seduced by the dark side of the Force, and he assumed Obi-Wan meant darker emotions like anger, guilt, and fear. He didn't want to fall down the same path as Vader. Poor Luke is so lost in doing this. The first thing, and really the only thing he knows how to do, is clear his mind and reach out to the Force. At this point in his training, sometimes it just kind of happened for him, but when he told himself to clear his mind, the words sort of hung in his mind. White letters on a green screen saying, "Clear your mind," which obviously didn't help at all. And that of course would send more thoughts in his head to clear out the old ones, and the same problem would happen over and over again. At this point he was still questioning how the Jedi did it reliably and on cue. Luke could feel the Force in combat or while piloting, but that was more instinctive, and he felt guided and warned in an almost effortless way by the Force. He knew at this point he needed to learn to consciously use his abilities, and he almost got there. Concentrating on his breathing instead of on clearing his mind, the words began to fade and a rhythm took over. The Force swirled around him, he could sense and feel energy, and just as he sensed the root and wondered if imagining it moving would make it happen, he was interrupted. That was anticlimactic. Sorry. But his second attempt is actually successful due to special circumstances. See, in Heir to the Jedi, Luke has a love interest that helps him with his abilities and the Force. It's a super cute relationship. When Luke tells her he's tried and failed to use the Force for telekinesis, she pulls a noodle from her bowl and puts it on the table between them, telling him to move it while joking around with him. This is exactly what Luke needs, as it provides a supportive and encouraging environment. So here's a reading from the moment where Luke first moved an object via the Force in Heir to the Jedi from Luke's point of view. I cracked a smile, which was probably her intention. There was no pressure, just friendly encouragement. I did feel encouraged, unlike on Rhodia, where I felt almost overwhelmed at the enormity of all I didn't know. But I did know what everyone knows about noodles. They are not very good in contests of wills. Perhaps this single wet noodle was the perfect object on which to begin. And if nothing happened, no big deal. It was just dinner with a new friend. I relaxed, closed my eyes, and stretched out with my mind, felt the Force around me, and found the noodle. I imagined it moving away from me and back to the base of Nakari's carton. A detailed animation in my mind for perhaps half a minute, and I envisioned the Force growing in such a way as to make that happen. Nakari's whoop broke my concentration. You did it! I did? I opened my eyes and saw a damp, squiggly line where the noodle had originally been resting, while the noodle itself lay in a completely different sine wave a few centimeters away from that position. It hadn't traveled all the way back to her carton as I'd envisioned, but it had undeniably moved. Yes, indeed! Look at you little noodle scooter! Okay, so that's the first thing post A New Hope, that Luke used the Force to move a wet noodle. This really isn't a joke. It was the first thing he learned to move. That's a huge victory for a farm boy that no longer has someone to teach him the ways of the Force, and really he has no idea how to use the Force. And later on, without the special love interest around, he would learn to control the powers a little bit more, including being able to lift a fork. So do you like that a wet noodle is the first thing that Luke moved with the Force, or do you wish it would have been something else? Thanks so much for watching. Please like the video and subscribe for more Star Wars videos.